Good evening, everyone, and a very hearty welcome to Aurora online classes. Dear students, in my previous class, I explained the poem A Tiger in the Zoo by a very great poet, Leslie Norris. And I taught you in the previous poem that a tiger is a denizen, a dweller of the forest. Forest is the natural habitat of a tiger, or it is the natural habitat of many wild animals. A tiger is free and fearless in its natural habitat. A tiger enjoys freedom there. There is no problem. A tiger can roam about freely wherever he wants to go. Then the tiger can hunt freely. There is no restriction on his activities and movements. So the tiger, we all know the tiger is a ferocious beast. It's a very fierce animal. But at the same time, if the same tiger is kept in the zoo, the tiger becomes a prisoner. The tiger feels like a prisoner. He doesn't behave, or he doesn't behave naturally. He doesn't show his actual personality. He doesn't reflect his original personality, true personality. When we talk about the true personality of the tiger, we know that the tiger is free, fearless. He is ferocious. He terrifies others. This is the natural personality. These are the natural traits of a tiger when he is in the forest. And forest is the natural habitat. Habitat means home, abode. He is the dweller of the forest. Freedom cannot be bargained. Freedom is a must for everyone. Be it a human being, be it a bird, or be it an animal. Freedom is a must for everyone. Everyone loves freedom. Everyone likes to be free. Nobody likes to be in chains. Nobody likes to be a slave. Nobody likes to be caged. Now, in today's class, let us, and the poet had sympathy for the tiger. The poet says that the tiger should not be tamed as a pet. It is uncontrollable, untamable. And when the tiger is put in a zoo, what happens? The tiger is well fed, the tiger is protected. Even though the tiger is well fed, the tiger is fed properly, the tiger is protected, people are there to protect the tiger. Even though what happens, the tiger is not happy. Even though everything is given to the tiger, but why is the tiger not happy? Why is the tiger sad? Why is the tiger uncomfortable? Why does the tiger feel uneasy? Why does the tiger not behave naturally? There is only one reason, and that is in the zoo, the tiger is completely devoid of freedom. In the zoo, the tiger doesn't enjoy any freedom. In the zoo, the tiger doesn't get any freedom. So, tiger is away from any kind of freedom in the cage, in the zoo. That is why tiger is unhappy, and tiger has to move around in the cage of the zoo. And the cage of the zoo, the area of movement, the range of movement for the tiger is very limited, as the tiger is confined to a zoo. So he gets a very limited area to roam about, which he doesn't like. So in this lesson, in today's session, I'll discuss about the rhyme scheme used in this poem. At the same time, I'll also discuss the poetic devices, I mean to say literary devices or figures of speech used in this poem. So let us discuss one by one. Dear students, when we talk about the rhyme, let us talk about the settings of the poem. In my previous class, I taught you that there are two distinct settings. Try to understand this one. Two setting. What does the word setting here means? Setting means the place where the tiger is kept and the place where the tiger lives. So setting refers to the place or area where the tiger lives or where the tiger is forcefully caged in the zoo. So there are two places here. In this poem we find two places. One is the cage in the zoo, another is the forest. Forest is the natural habitat, that wilderness means forest. So that forest is the natural habitat. So this is the right place for a tiger to be there. So one setting, the tiger in the forest, and we have one more setting that the tiger is in the zoo. So there are two settings, two places, two areas, two territories, and one the tiger in the zoo, and another one, the other one is the tiger in the forest. That is why this poem has two settings. The tiger in the zoo. Zoo is a place where the tiger is forcefully caged, and the tiger in the forest. And forest, the tiger is the denizen, the dweller, the inhabitant of the forest. The tiger lives freely there. He is free and fierce, and he is fearless. The tiger is fearless in the forest. So two areas are mentioned in the poem, and these two areas, these two places are called the setting of this poem, or setting mentioned in this poem. So there are two distinct settings: tiger in the zoo and the tiger in the forest. Two areas, two places: zoo and forest, two settings. Let us talk about the rhyme scheme used in the poem. You know, this poem actually consists of 5 stanzas. How many stanzas do we have in this poem? So we have 5 stanzas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can count it. So there are 5 stanzas. There are 5 stanzas in this poem, and each of the 5 stanzas, listen, each of the 5 stanzas of this poem follows the same simple rhyme scheme. Means each of the 5 stanzas of this poem follows the same rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme is not different. Each of them follows the same rhyme scheme. And what is the rhyme scheme? A, B, C, B. A, B, C, B. Let us talk about he talks in his vivid stripes. Just give A for stripes. The few steps of his cage. The word stripes doesn't rhyme with cage, so just give B for cage. On pads of velvet quiet, stripes and quiet. Stripes rhymes with quiet. Stripes rhymes with quiet. Does the stripes rhyme with quiet? No. So just give C. And then in his quiet rage, cage and rage. Cage rhymes with rage. So give A for stripes, B for cage, as it does not rhyme with cage, and then quiet is also different. So give C for quiet and rage. Cage and rage rhymes with each other, so give B. And the same rhyme scheme is followed in each and every stanza. So I would say that ABCB is the rhyme scheme of the poem. Or what is the rhyme pattern of this poem? ABCB. The same rhyme scheme is followed in the rest of the stanza. Let us talk about some other poetic devices used in the poem. I have taught you in this poem that this tiger is personified. Personification, you know, it's a poetic device, or it's a literary device, or it's a figure of speech. And this poetic device is prominent in this poem. The poem starts with he, and he refers to the tiger. Actually, the tiger is a non-human. Tiger is a non-human being. It is not a human being. So when we give human attributes or human qualities to non-living things or non-human, which those who are not humans, Animals are also not humans. So when we give human qualities to non-living things and non-human beings, it is called, this device is called personification. Here the tiger is an animal, the tiger is not a human being, but the poet uses he for the tiger. The poet does not use it. Generally what happens, we use it for animals and non-living things, like it is a marker, it is a board, it is a bottle, it is a chair, it is a fan. We use it for non-living things, and we also use it for animals and birds. It is a cow, it is a buffalo, it is an elephant. We use it. It is a tiger, it is a horse. We use it for animals and non-living things. But in place of using, or instead of using it for the tiger, the poet uses he for the tiger. So, and he is used for human beings. So the poet uses he for the tiger. So in the whole poem, in this poem, the tiger is personified. So then his strength behind bars, the poet also uses his for the tiger. The poet uses he for the tiger. The poet uses his for the tiger. So this is the device of personification. So personification has been used. Then metaphor. Have a look. Metaphor, I have already taught you that metaphor is a comparison. It is a poetic device when comparison is made. When comparison is made between two different things without using as or like. Just have a look at the third stanza of the third line of the first stanza. And what is the third line of the first stanza? On pads of velvet quiet. On pads of velvet quiet. This is the third line of the first stanza. Which figure of speech is there? Of course, metaphor. How? Let us try to understand. Actually, the poet compares the pads of the tiger's feet. Pads of the tiger's feet. The poet compares the pads of, because the tiger has padded feet, so the poet compares the pads of the tiger feet with velvet. Means the pads of the tiger feet are compared with velvet. And you know, velvet is silky, soft and smooth. So the pads of the tiger feet, the pads of the tiger feet are also soft. They are also smooth. So the pads, the smooth and soft feet, the smooth and soft pads of the tiger feet are compared to velvet. That is why the poet has used the device of metaphor in the third stanza of the in the third line of the first stanza. I hope it is clear to you. So metaphor is clear to you. Then one more thing I would like to say. Let us talk about the last line of the first stanza. Quiet rage. Last line of the first stanza. Last line of the first stanza. Last line. Last line of the first stanza. Last line of the first stanza. First stanza. What is this? Last line? Last line of the first stanza. And the last line of the first stanza is in his quiet rage. In his quiet rage. This is the last line of the first stanza of the poem, A Tiger in the Zoo. Let us talk about. Name the figure of speech used in this line. If I am not mistaken, I am pretty sure that I have taught you. I have taught you earlier oxymoron. And if it is not clear to you, just try to understand. Oxymoron or oxymoron. Oxymoron. M-O-R-O-N. Oxymoron. This figure of speech has been used in the line "in his quiet rage." What is oxymoron? Oxymoron is the use of opposite words. Use of opposite words. Opposite words combined together. Combined together means when the words of, listen, when the words of opposite meaning are combined together side by side, this device is called oxymoron. Suppose, let me give an example. If I say bittersweet, life is bittersweet. Life is bittersweet. Life is bittersweet. You see, bitter and sweet, these two words are placed together. These two words are placed together. Bitter is the opposite of sweet, and sweet is the opposite of bitter. So both the bitter, sweet are the words of opposite meaning placed side by side, placed together. This is the example of oxymoron. It is an open secret. Open secret. Secret means something hidden. Open is the opposite of hidden. Open is the opposite of closed. So open secret is also the example of oxymoron. So when the words of the opposite meaning are, when the words of opposite meaning are combined together, or you can say when the words of opposite meaning are placed together, used together, combined together, this is the device of oxymoron. Have a look. In his quiet rage. Rage means extreme anger. Extreme anger. This is rage. R-A-G-E. Rage. And quiet means absolute silence. Absolute means complete silence. Complete silence. Silence is the opposite of anger. Silence is the opposite of anger. So, quiet rage. In his quiet rage, the device of oxymoron has been used. In his, because the tiger is in the cage, the tiger has suppressed his, the tiger is unhappy and sad, the tiger is angry, the tiger has suppressed his anger. The tiger doesn't show anger as it shows in the forest. That is why in his quiet rage, quiet means silence, absolute silence means complete silence, and then rage means anger. Silence is the opposite of anger. So in his quiet rage, the device of oxymoron is there. So this is the device of oxymoron. Apart from this, we have the device of repetition also. Repetition. Have a look. We have repetition, and where do we have repetition? We have repetition here, like that. On pads of velvet quiet, and in his quiet rage. The word quiet has been used 2 times. So the word quiet has been used repeatedly. So there is the repetition of the words quiet, quiet. In the third line, last word, on the pads of velvet quiet. The word quiet is there. Then in the last line, in his quiet rage, these 2 words have been used. So there is also repetition. Then let us talk about the first stanza, third and last lines. And stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. And stares with his brilliant eyes, brilliant. And in the third line, we come across the word brilliant. And in the last line of the last stanza, at the brilliant stars. So the word brilliant has been repeated twice in the last stanza of the poem. So we can say brilliant eyes, brilliant stars. The word brilliant has been used. So this is an example of repetition. Apart from repetition, we have alliteration also. We have alliteration also. Have a look. Apart from alliteration, we have assonance and consonance. I'll explain it to you. Now, alliteration. You see, alliteration, last line. Last stanza, first line. Last stanza, first line. He hears the last voice at night. He hears. He hears. Have a look. He hears. He hears. He hears the last voice at night. This is the first line of the last stanza. He hears. You see, the word he begins with H, and the word hears also begins with H. So the word he begins with H, and the word hears also begins with H. So this is an example of alliteration. Then we have plump deer pass. Plump means very fat or fleshy. Chubby also. Chubby means fat, fleshy. Plump deer pass. See, the word plump begins with P, and the word pass also begins with the letter P. Letters, the first letters are same. This is an example of alliteration. So dear students, we have alliteration in this poem too. Apart from alliteration, we have one more figure of speech, and that is imagery. Imagery means mental picture. The picture that is formed in your mind. When you go through this poem, you will find the picture of the tiger in the cage comes to your mind. When I teach you, when I tell you that the tiger is put in the cage in the zoo, all of a sudden, within a second, the picture of a tiger caged in a zoo comes to your mind. You can see the caged tiger in a zoo in your imagination. Then when I tell you that the tiger hides in the long grasses and waits for the plump deer to hunt, that picture also comes to your mind. So here in this poem there is imagery. So the imagery, the device of imagery has also been used in this poem. So rhyme scheme once again, ABCB. We have some prominent figures of speech used in this line, that we have personification. The tiger is personified. Then we have metaphor. Apart from metaphor, we have oxymoron. We have repetition, and we have alliteration, and we have also onomatopoeia, means use of sound words. The tiger snarls, onomatopoeia. This is the example of onomatopoeia when the tiger snarls. The word snarls is there. In the third stanza, first line, he should be snarling. Snarling means growl. So when the tiger growls, growls, this is a sound word. Snarl, snarls, snarls. It's a sound word. So use of sound words is called onomatopoeia. onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is also used. It is the use of sound words that, like that. A snake hisses, bee budges, buzzing sound, hissing sound, a dog barks, barking sound, pitter patter, raindrops. Have sound words. So use of sound words is called onomatopoeia. So in this poem we have onomatopoeia in the first line of the third stanza. He should be snarling around houses. So my dear students, we have discussed all these prominent figures of speech, rhyme scheme of the poem A Tiger in the Zoo. And I hope that whatever I have taught you, whatever I have discussed today, you must have understood it. I have tried my level best to explain it to you in a very proper way, in a very lucid style, so that you may be able to understand. It should be comprehensible. You should comprehend it. You can make out it. Make out means to understand. It's a phrase. I can't make out means I don't understand. I can make out. Make out. Make out means understand. To understand. Make out. So you can make out easily. M-A-K-E. Make out. To make out means to understand. To understand. So I have tried my level best to explain it to you, and I am pretty sure that whatever I have taught you, you can easily make out, you can easily understand it, and I hope that you must have understood it. So with this, today's lesson comes to its end. Thank you very much. This is all for today. Till then, be happy, stay blessed, keep learning, keep practicing. Thank you.